Welcome to the pocket. My name is Scooter, and here for you guys today. I got my week 14 power rankings. And now finally, I have a power rankings from the week before, so I'm not changing every single team by like 3 or 4 spots. So I'm pretty excited. I'm fired up for this one, and we're going to get right into it starting at the bottom. You guys should see the tier list to my left, and I want to get it edited so that we can kind of reveal them one at a time, but I don't think that's going to happen right now. It's been a grind making these videos, but I'm getting you the content. So, like I said, starting at the bottom, we got the New York Football Giants sitting at 2-10. They rest easy and do not move from their 32 ranked spot. Now, could the next team be worse than them? Maybe, but I'm just not going to move them from this spot for the entire rest of the year. Um, I do hope that maybe the Giants win like maybe one game or, they start to look more competitive. I mean, they looked okay against the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, but that was really all in garbage time, right? The Cowboys kind of got lazy. They kind of let the Giants back into the game. The Cowboys really aren't a good team. I mean, they did beat the Commanders the week before, but not very impressed. I guess this isn't the worst the Giants have looked all year, but I wouldn't say it's gotten much better without Dexter Lawrence, Theo Johnson. We know Illuminor was injured in last week's game, so it's just over. It's been over for this Giants team, and looking forward to the draft and hopefully a new quarterback. At least if it's a bridge guy or something, because I can't stand any more of this Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, and all the hatred around the quarterback situation. Moving on to our next team at 31, moving down one spot to get here, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars sitting at 2-10. Last week, Trevor Lawrence got absolutely destroyed on a very late hit by, I believe it was Aziz Al-Shaair of the Texans. I could be wrong. Trevor Lawrence was scrambling and he took off. He went to slide. And as his, I would say, head was maybe 2 feet off the ground, right? So he's pretty far laid back. The guy still comes in full speed and hits him right in the head. Of course, T-Law's head bounces off the turf. And the rest is history. So, the Jags dropping another one, losing T-Law. I was a little concerned for the Texans, but clearly my concern was not warranted. I thought maybe with T-Law coming back that they would be able to compete offensively based off of how the Titans were able to hang with them, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. I mean, they did hang in there for a 3-point game, but in the end of the day, it didn't really ever feel like the Jaguars were going to win. This season's over for them anyway. Why would they want to win? They don't need a quarterback, but they can trade that pick. And just one spot makes all the difference between getting, a first and a second in the following draft or, maybe not quite as much. So unfortunate for the Jaguars. I would just shut down T-Law and, look forward to next year. Moving on to our next team, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Moving up one spot ahead of the Jaguars because of their performance against the Chiefs. And I can't believe they lost, really. I mean, it looked like it was going to happen again, didn't it? But I guess in the end of the day, the Chiefs, this is what I said about them last week, is they just don't beat they don't beat themselves, right? That's what they allow other teams to do to themselves when they're playing the Chiefs. And that's simply what the Raiders did. I mean, the Chiefs were winning this game pretty handedly until finally Brock Bowers and Aiden O'Connell really started connecting and, put together some touchdown drives. But, getting back down the field into field goal range with, a play or two left and they fumble a snap. And it's just such a Raiders thing to happen. It really reminds me of the Giants versus the Panthers, except they were playing the Chiefs, right? So you got to move them up after a performance like that. But you really can't overreact to 1 week, especially when it's like a divisional game and one as notorious as this for like spreads not being accurate and our expectations for the game not being accurate. Not going to overreact, but I'll give them a little boost. I would say they're in a better position right now than the Jaguars and the Giants. Moving on to our next team at number 29, we have the New England Patriots at 3-10. They drop another one to the Colts this week by 1 point, as I predicted, by 1 point. So they're just going to sit still. I kind of explained last week how I just feel like the Patriots, they've put in a ton of work, obviously, to get this roster to play at the level they've been playing this season. But in the end of the day, talent's got to be there, and they don't have enough talent to make the extra play to win these close games that they're staying in. So I would say they have a great outlook for next year. Drake May looks like he was the right pick. So good for them. It looks like they got some young skill guys. Obviously, their defense is pretty good. So, like I said, looking good for next year. But as for the rest of this season, I just think they're just tired, right? They've been playing so hard all year. There's not as much motivation to win when you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. So, not that they thought they were going to make it, but that's what you tell yourself when you're on the team is, oh, we're still in playoff contention. We just got to win out. That's not happening anymore for them. Moving on to our next team at number 28, we have the Tennessee Titans, dropping one spot, sitting there at 3-9. Last week, they beat the Texans, so I was really like, wow, maybe Will Levis is starting to break out a little bit. I mean, he still had some, pick six in that game, but despite the pick six, he was still able to score 30 points, and the Titans defense held them technically to 20, right? Because they scored off the pick six. It's not on the defense. So I was really expecting them to give the Commanders a better fight. But instead, looks like the Texans win was just kind of a fluke, and the Commanders were just, looking at the Titans as a rebound game. So back down to earth for the Titans. Like I said, the Texans defense, I'll get into it more later, but they're prone to like these sort of fluky performances, letting up a lot of big plays, and that's what it was from this Titans offense. So in hindsight, it makes a lot more sense that wasn't really indicative of the Titans' growth as much as it was a bad game from the Texans. Moving on to our next team, the New York Jets, sitting there at 3-9, dropping 4 spots. I had this team so high in the preseason. A lot of people didn't. A lot of people, were down on them and didn't believe in like their Super Bowl or playoff hopes, but they still said, say, 9 wins or so, right? I think the lowest I saw was maybe like 7 or 8. 3-9, I mean, this is the most disappointing and underperforming, talented team I've ever seen in my entire life. And you know what? This has been a thing with the Jets for many, many years. It's not like they've ever had a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, but they've had great teams that just can't get it done in the big moments. And now with this team, it's like every game is like one of those big moments, and they just can't pull it together and figure out how to win. I mean, they had how many points off of special teams this week against the Seahawks team? That's a good team, right? And this is the thing. This Jets team hangs in there with good teams, but they just can't finish it off. And I think it comes down to like leadership, ownership, coaching. Who's really the guy? Is it our head coach? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Who are we supposed to listen to? Everybody's angry. Everyone's upset. Everyone's frustrated. And this team is just out on this year. Everybody is giving up. And when I think it comes to like dysfunction, maybe the Jaguars are worse, but I would say the Jets are the most dysfunctional team in the NFL right now. Moving on to our next team at number 26, we have the Dallas Cowboys at 5-7. Moving up 2 spots, more so because the Jets and the Titans drop below them. And I don't really view the Cowboys that differently after what happened on Thanksgiving. In fact, I actually thought they were going to win by 10 points. Now, I understand the Giants kind of, crawled their way back in. If they don't score that touchdown, it's 27-13. And, that would have been the score, right? 27-13. Yeah. So I predicted 23-13. So it was pretty much what I thought was going to happen. But like I said, the Jets and the Titans just moving down below them. I mean, the Cowboys are still competent, clearly, even without Dak. So clearly better than the Titans and the Jets. And that's really all that I have to say about the Cowboys. They did suffer, I believe it was an injury to like one of their breakout undrafted rookie guys. I can't remember his name. He had a great story, but I was messing with my Cowboys buddy about that. But, you don't root for injuries. And I know it's not funny. If you're listening, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just yanking your chain. Moving on to our next team, number 25, the New Orleans Saints. They're sitting there at 4-8, and they haven't moved in my tier list. And I guess they fought in this game against the Rams. I thought it would be higher scoring, but I guess they don't have Olave and they don't have Shaheed. And I guess even with Olave and Shaheed, this team just really doesn't inspire me because even getting their starting quarterback back, they're just barely better than the Cowboys, who don't even have their quarterback. And, I think if the Cowboys and Saints played today or let's say Dak was healthy and they played at this point in the season, I don't think the Saints are rolling them the way that they did early in the year. Yeah, I know the Saints were healthy. The Cowboys were also healthy early in the year, but I think it was just a Cowboys thing to do to just start off the season really bad, and then they sort of figure it out. It's kind of what happened last year. Now, as for the Saints, it's just like, what does this team really have to hang their hat on? I don't see it. It's not Derek Carr. I mean, Olave is a promising young receiver, and so is Shaheed, but either they're injured or they're not consistent. And their defense has a lot of aging veterans. They traded away Lattimore. I guess they played pretty well against the Rams, who are a competitive team, but I just think that was probably like the best that they're capable of playing, like close to it at least, right? Because I wouldn't say that, they're doing that to one of the teams in like the playoff contenders tier, whereas the Rams are playoff hopefuls, right? So they can hang in a game like that, but against a playoff contender, I don't see it. Now moving on to my next team. We got the Carolina Panthers at number 24. They're 3-9. They haven't moved for me. But let's go, Bryce Young, right? I mean, he took Baker to overtime, didn't he? Right? He took the Buccaneers to overtime, and I get it that the Buccaneers don't have Godwin anymore. But they've gotten, Evans back, and I get Bucky is questionable now and whatnot, but he was playing the majority of the game. He actually had a really good second half and overtime. But this Panthers team, I mean, this offense looks like legit and functional. I mean, sure, they only scored 23 points against the Bucs, but I mean, I'm sort of speaking relatively, right, to where they're coming from. Or you look at some of these other teams like the Titans, who are so inconsistent, right? Or the Patriots, who just don't have a ceiling. The Raiders, Jaguars, Giants, they don't have a ceiling. But you look at the Panthers, who were down there just a couple weeks ago, and were pretty clearly viewed as like the worst team in the NFL. To see them come so far and to see Bryce Young start to succeed with this young cast is really exciting to me. And I predicted in the preseason that they would go 7-10, and it's not looking like that's going to happen. But I will say that they've lost 2 close games to really good teams. So I would say my sort of Dave Canales is going to save the Panthers take is starting to age a little bit better, especially since I did say, it might take the first half of the season, for everything to mesh, everyone to figure things out. I guess Bryce Young just had to sit for a little bit, but, you gotta go through and, work through some of those knots initially in the season once you have a new head coach and you got a young quarterback until you finally start to figure it out and put it together. Moving on to our next team at number 23, we have the Cleveland Browns, who are 3-9 and at 23. Why? They moved up 3 spots. They looked so good. Sometimes they look so good. Even in the same game, they might look really, really good. And then in, another drive, they will look really, really bad. And that's just the Jameis Winston experience. And this is what we were all asking for. Everyone was out on Watson for clear and obvious reasons. And, everyone was begging for Jameis to get put in. And by an act of God, Jameis gets in there because Watson got injured, right? So nobody in the Cleveland Browns organization had to make that decision. It just happened. Hopefully for them, they can just move on from Watson this offseason, just cut him, just roll with Jameis or draft a new quarterback. So playing the way that they are right now, I mean, obviously their defense is very talented and, their offense is upside, both, for a wide range of outcomes, drive to drive. So I see maybe like, I haven't looked too far into their schedule, but I could see them winning 1 or 2 more games for the rest of the year. And I can't say the same thing for some of the rest of these teams, right? And I think 1 or 2 might even be a little generous. I mean, this is the same team that beat the Ravens. They almost beat the Broncos. I mean, this is a good team right here. Like I said, relative to the tier, obviously, I'm very high on them if I have them up here. Excuse me. But yeah, moving on to our next team, number 22, we got the Chicago Bears. They're 4-8. They have not moved for me. I wouldn't say I expected the game to happen exactly like that, but I pretty much said, I think the Bears are talented, but the Lions are talented and a good football team. Like the Bears have found ways to lose games all year, and the Lions are the opposite, right? They find ways to win games, to ice them, and to extend leads. The Bears just can't do that. So what happens? Eberflus is fired, gone. Apparently they parted ways. Yeah, right. So to me, I'm like, who's next to blame? I mean, they have a new coordinator on offense. So unless if the offense starts to look bad, then you're not going to be able to say it's him. You're not going to be able to say it's the OC. I don't think Caleb's the problem. I don't think the roster's the problem. So maybe it was Eberflus in the decision making, but I wouldn't say Eberflus, um, you know, was doing what was it? Tyreek Stevenson, wasn't he in the end zone like taunting Commanders fans in that game? You see what I'm saying? Like this, excuse me, this Bears team, they've got a bit of a culture and identity issue, I think, because they're supposed to be this defensive team. And Eberflus had this defense playing really, really well. But when you can't execute coaching decisions, clock management, and things of that nature, being good at defense is not as helpful. And being good at offense isn't as helpful either, but especially defense, because when you're a defensive heavy team, you're trying to control the clock, you're trying to control possessions, and you're trying to win those, coaching decisions and those clock management decisions. You're trying to do a better job than the other team. You're trying to win time of possession. But when you have a bad coach, it just ends up not working out, right? This Bears team has so much potential. I'm pretty disappointed in them for going 4-8. I wouldn't be surprised if they went on like a tiny win streak. I mean, what is there, 5 games left? I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs or anything, but yeah, who's next to blame? That's what I'm wondering. Moving on to our next team, we have the Indianapolis Colts at 5-7 at number 21, and they have not moved. Why? Well, pretty much exactly what I thought was going to happen happened. I said that they would beat the Patriots by 1 point. Give me the Patriots spread, but the Colts money line. You love that negative correlation. So they stay where they're at. They really didn't prove anything by beating the Patriots. I mean, I guess Anthony Richardson looks a little better. He is a problem in the red zone. I mean, I don't know why they haven't just been running QB power every single time they get down there. I get they have Jonathan Taylor, but hey, run read option, right? Run read option with a pulling tight end and just do that every time you're in the red zone. Run those RPOs and just let AR take off and do his, and however he thinks is the easiest way for him to score, just let him do it. He's a young player. He's still developing. And obviously you want him to get better at the things he's not good at. But if you want to win games today, you got to use him in the ways he is good at. And he's built like Cam Newton, so use him like a battering ram. And what do you know? What is this, 2 weeks in a row that they've won a game like this? So good for them, but I'm going to keep him in place. You don't get moved up for beating a bottom team, even if you are a little lower on the list. Moving on to, I believe this is the last team in my yes, this is the last team in my still trying to win tier. The Cincinnati Bengals. Yes, they do technically still have a chance to make the playoffs. But you know what? I'm done with this team. There's no way. I mean, it's totally possible that they can win 4 in a row or like 3 in a row, but they're just going to drop one at one point. I mean, this is what this team has shown us this year is they're just cooked. I mean, their defense is just too bad. What, they let up 44 points to the Steelers? I mean, the Steelers, they've got an identity on offense, but how do you let up 44 points to an old Russell Wilson? You know, I get that, like I said, I get they got weapons and their offensive line isn't too bad, but you just can't let up that many points in a divisional game, a must win. I mean, I don't even know what to say at this point. I don't think I've ever seen an offense that is so good mixed with a defense that is so bad, just completely wasting the potential. I mean, Joe Burrow has kept them in almost every single game with this offense, but it just hasn't been enough because the defense just can't get a stop when it matters. So I think it's pretty cut and dry when it comes to the Bengals. Yes, they're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, so they are still trying to win, and they will for the rest of the year as long as Burrow's healthy. But I think their season's pretty much over. It's nearly impossible for them to make the playoffs. Moving on to our next tier, the playoff hopefuls. Now, this team, I've got a lot to say about them. I mean, they only moved up 1 because the Bengals moved down, right? Don't think I'm showing some sort of bias towards the 49ers. This isn't me digging my heels in on my take. This is just honestly where I think they should be. Excuse me. This 49ers team has been absolutely decimated by injuries this year. I feel like this happens like every 3 years. Like the 49ers suffer a bunch of injuries, and then the following 2 years they go to the NFC Championship 2 years in a row. And even when they went 2 years in a row, they suffered injuries to their quarterbacks, Purdy, and what was it, Jimmy Garoppolo, who was still there that season, and then the third string. Can't remember his name right now. Maybe it was Josh Johnson. But the point is, this 49ers team, this is just one of those years where they just missed it, right? You can't really do anything about the injuries. It looks like McCaffrey may have injured his knee. Some feel maybe he re-injured his Achilles or something like that. That'd be really unfortunate for him and for the 49ers in general. You know, he's making a lot of money, and obviously he's maybe the most important player on their offense. Even though he is just a running back, he is so good in the receiving game that he might as well be a slot receiver as well. And, you know, he's really good at both running and receiving. So, like I said, just a banged up team that has so much potential. It's just not going to happen this year. I believe Trent Williams is still out too as well. And that's pretty much all you need to know, right? You're missing those 3 guys or those 2 guys, and, you know, Purdy's not 100%. I just don't have a lot of hope for them to surpass these other NFC teams who I have listed ahead of them. But moving on to an AFC team, and this team will actually play the 49ers in a few weeks. The Miami Dolphins at number 18. They're 5-7. They played the Packers at Green Bay on Thanksgiving, and I said, cold weather game, the Dolphins will lose. And it happened. I said I didn't want to boil it down, but you know what? Sometimes these narratives really are true in the NFL, and you got to pay attention to them, because if you really want to get ahead of Vegas or something like that, you got to buy into some sort of narrative, right? Because if you saw the spread, I believe it was Green Bay -3.5. I mean, if this is one of those cold weather games that the Dolphins suffer, and they're losing by at least a touchdown to whoever competent team it is that they're playing, right? The Packers are a great team. And the Dolphins did start to mount a comeback, but it's just too little too late, right? Maybe they finally warmed up after playing for all that time. But for the remainder of the season, they have 3 warm weather games. It's home versus the Jets, at Houston, and home versus the 49ers. And then they have 2 cold games left, the Jets and the Browns. Now, I think they could beat the Browns. Maybe. Depending on how bad the weather is, I think they could beat the Browns. The Jets, they should beat. Now, they should sweep them, I would just say. They're probably going to sweep the Jets. It's a toss-up versus the Browns, toss-up versus the Texans and the 49ers. So I'd consider them 7-7 right now with 2 tough games remaining. So I'm not uber confident. Oh, my goodness. My throat is so dry today. My apologies. I'm trying my best to talk through this probably 50-minute video, so I'm doing my best right now. But let's keep it pushing. Like I said, they got I would say they're 7-7 right now, sweeping the Jets, and they got 2 toss-up warm weather games remaining against our number 19 team and our number 9 team. So not ideal. Maybe they finish 9-8 or 8-9 or something along those lines, but you know, I don't have a lot of hope for them, but I do recognize their potential. I think they're healthier than the 49ers. I don't think they're like in that trying to win tier. I think they're much better than that. So that's why I have them up here. Obviously, their offense has elite potential when the weather is right. So call it like 50% of the time, this team has an elite component. And I don't think you could say about the 49ers right now or any of the teams below them, except for maybe the Bears defense or the Bengals offense, right? So that's what separates the Dolphins. And then moving up to our next team at number 17, we have the Los Angeles Rams at 6-6, moving up 2 spots. I mean, I thought they were going to beat the Saints, and this is really more about the Bengals dropping below them. And yeah, I mean, it's really just about that. I guess they did move up 1 spot, but they're back to 500, you know. And they just need to keep winning. This is when they can really lean on their, you know, their coaching with McVay and his chemistry with Stafford. Obviously, Puka and Cup are still there. And maybe that can carry them to be, all I got to do at this point is finish 3-2, and they got a decent shot at winning the division. If they go 4-1, then they have a really good shot to win the division, especially because most of the games that these NFC West teams are playing are interdivision. So I do think there is potential here, but this is still a team with a very bad offensive line and a defense that isn't very deep. And I just worry about the sustainability. I mean, you beat the Saints by a touchdown. Sure, that's pretty decent, but I would expect maybe a more impressive performance if you wanted me to consider you a playoff contender. So that's all I got to say about the Rams. I mean, I think everyone knows who they are. They got Stafford, Cup, and Puka, McVay, and Kyron. Let's not forget Kyron. Shout out. And then, they got Braden Fisk and Jared Verse on defense. Two young, talented rookies. But other than that, they really don't have too much. So I'm actually really split between them and the next team. But I guess I'll talk about it now as we move into the next team. Oh, my goodness. Number 16, the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, I'm feeling a little under the weather, if you couldn't tell. I was going to try to, conceal it and not tell you guys, but it would just make a lot more sense if I just told you that I was. So just keep that in mind moving forward for all the coughing, the dry throat, and everything like that. I'm grinding to get these videos out for you guys. But sorry about that. Without further delay, the Atlanta Falcons, they're 6-6. I dropped them 2 spots. I'm sick of watching Kirk Cousins spoil this offensive roster, especially the offensive roster. I mean, they got a great offensive line. They have an elite running back. They have an elite pair of wide receivers. They have Mooney and London. They have an elite tight end, potentially, right? I guess maybe there is some kind of common denominator with Kyle Pitts at this point, but I still believe in the potential of Kyle Pitts. So they got everything they need on offense. They have one of the Rams coaches, bringing that scheme over. It's perfect fit for a guy like Kirk, but it's just he doesn't have any elite attributes physically. His elite attribute is his IQ, but he really doesn't move well in the pocket. And like I say, he doesn't have a strong arm or anything like that. So whenever his IQ doesn't make up for all of that, which it very much can, and it has over his career. But whenever it doesn't, it's just you get these ugly games from him. And, I feel like I've seen too many of them this year. I mean, Kirk Cousins, outside of the 2 games versus the Bucs, look at his stats. They're not really that good. They're not that impressive. Their pass rush has been a problem all year. Maybe it was a little better in this game, but it's still just a team that, like I said, smack right dab down in the middle. Until they start starting Penix or something like that, I'm not going to buy into the upside that this offense has. And as a result, I have moved the next team who is in their division above them. So, number 15, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have them at 6-6. So, theoretically, they haven't moved, right? But the Falcons moved below them. So, they jumped them. Like I said, the Falcons look like garbage. I wouldn't say the Bucs looked great versus the Panthers, but they got the win. They're doing what they have to do. And you know what? Their quarterback doesn't look terrible. And I would say, the Falcons have a lot of advantages over the Bucs, but, I would give the edge to Baker and the Buccaneers at quarterback, which is, the most important position, especially when you get to this time of the year and especially when you get to the playoffs. So, just general power rankings, I think it's pretty clear and obvious, even though the Falcons beat the Bucs twice this year. I do not care at all. The Buccaneers are a better football team than the Falcons. Those 2 games were pretty close too. Maybe the second one wasn't quite as close, but I'm pretty sure the first one went into overtime. Oh my goodness. That was a good one though. Felt like it actually cleared things up. Let's get a little more water. Glad you guys are enjoying this clown show of me trying to record a 50-minute video while I'm sick, but we love it, right? We love the grind. We love making these videos for you guys, and I love nothing more than doing this, so not a problem at all for me. No embarrassment whatsoever. Moving on to the next team. Number 14, the Arizona Cardinals at 6-6. They're dropping 1 spot. But I am disappointed that they did not get the upset that I called them having. The Vikings are a great team and they don't beat themselves. And you know what? They certainly didn't in this game when they had the opportunity to go win it. They did. But the Cardinals, you know what? They impressed. We view this Vikings team as a playoff contending team, and the Cardinals were right there. Obviously, this defense, like I said last week, is much improved from what it was earlier in the season. And the offense, it really just depends on Kyler and Marv, right? I mean, they connected for 6 this week, but it's been really spotty all year. And I just feel like if they get into rhythm, that's what this team needs to take that next step to be a true playoff contender. But as for now, like I said, I know they're moving down one spot. It's just because the Commanders, I moved them so far down, and I guess we'll talk about that, when we talk about them. But like I said, it's more or less I view the Cardinals the same. Not changing my view on them. They did almost what I expected them to do, but not too disappointed. Moving on to our next team, number 13, the Washington Commanders, who are 8-5, and they move up 3 spots. So I feel like it was a good win. Obviously the Titans are not a good team, but they blew them out, right? I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm not going to give teams credit for beating bad teams, especially if it's by 1 point. But you know what? This isn't even about them just blowing out the Titans. This is also, I think I overreacted a little bit to the loss to the Cowboys. I was really ready to pounce on this team and say, oh, not to say that they're frauds, but just they're not as good as their record shows, right? They've won a lot of close games, and then they weren't playing so well the past few weeks since that Ravens game. So, like I said, I think I overreacted a little bit last week. They did have an impressive win this week against a team that I think is better than the Patriots, barely, but they are better, and they beat them by a hell of a lot more than 1 point. So there you have it, Commanders +3, looking good heading into the playoffs, and I believe they were my first team in my playoff contenders tier. Yep. So that's how it should be. And yeah, we'll move on to our next team, number 12, the Seattle Seahawks, who are 7-5. Now they're moving down 1 spot, and I'll get into that when we talk about the next team. But for the Seahawks, they overcame a lot of adversity in this game, special teams adversity. The Jets scored a lot of points off of those bad special teams plays that the Seahawks had. But you know what? The Seahawks found a way to come back and win. And that's just kind of what I thought would happen when I picked the money line. I mean, it was like a 1-point favorite flipping back and forth. And I really wasn't sure. And I said, you know what? The Jets haven't found a way to win all year. And the Seahawks, they're not like when I say the Lions, but they've reasonably found a way to win recently. So I picked them to win, and what do you know? That's what happened. This offense is coming together. Like I said, JSN breaking out, DK getting healthier and healthier every week. K9 and Charbonnet are good. The O-line still stinks, but Geno is doing enough to make the offense productive. And then the defense, Leonard Williams, didn't he have like a pick 6 this game? Oh my God. Every time the Giants move off a player, it's just one of our best ones, right? And what do you know? They end up doing even better on a better team. So won't hang. I'm not going to talk about that too much. We're talking about the Seahawks right now, but yeah, they may have overcome a lot of special teams mishaps, but that's not like a positive thing, right? You should be saying it's a positive thing if the special teams is good. Right now, all 3 facets of your team are doing their job, and nobody has to make up for each other. Like, how Joe Burrow's got to make up for the defense being bad. Or say early on in the year when the Bears defense had to make up for the Bears offense being bad. Now you have the Seahawks, who their offense and defense has to make up for their special teams being bad. So you don't want that. But they did overcome it, but it was against the Jets. So let's see them put it all together against, let's say, a playoff contending team. Moving on to our next team, number 11, we got the Denver Broncos. They're 8-5, and I moved them up 1 spot ahead of the Seahawks. Why? I just think I'm so impressed by Bo Nix. I mean, I get you through 2 picks in this game, but just you look at what he's working with. The offensive line's decent. The defense is obviously great, but the cast of weapons is so interesting to me. I mean, you look at what happened in this game and the way this Broncos offensive receiving core is constructed. It's so interesting. I mean, they don't really have a true number 1. Outside of Sutton, there was no receiver with more than 3 catches in this game. They have like 2 X's, right? They have their burner X. X is an outside wide receiver, for those of you who don't know. and their job is to stretch the field to get open deep. And you can do that either by being fast, like Marvin Mims, or you could be a big guy who's, kind of like the rebounder type, back shoulder guy, and that's Cortland Sutton. So they got two X's. Troy Franklin seems like, he played with Bo Nix in college, but, he's trying to work his way into the slot or like the number one role, and it's working okay. But um, it's just like there's no number one wide receiver here, and Bo Nix just still gets it done because he just follows Sean Payton's system. And you know what? It was a match made in heaven. So with the way that this defense is playing, they've been playing elite all year for the Seahawks. It's taken some time, so I have a little more faith in the Broncos defense. And Bo Nix may be a rookie quarterback, but he's no ordinary rookie, that's for sure. I'm pretty sure he's like 25 years old. So he's already very mature, and obviously he's on the same page as Sean Payton. So I think if push comes to shove, if say these two teams played in, I guess it would have to be the Super Bowl, I would take the Broncos just because I think their defense pairs right up with the Seahawks defense. It's probably even a little better. And then their offense and special teams, I just have slightly more faith in due to the coaching. Moving on to our next team, number 10, we got the Los Angeles Chargers at 8-4, who are just a hair above the Denver Broncos. And just like I thought this week, they just know how to win, right? And the Falcons, I mean, I didn't think it would all be like Kirk's fault, but they clamped him. I mean, he threw like 4 picks. You couldn't move in the pocket. He was just in distress the whole game. The Falcons are a talented offense, so like I said, I don't know if they're thinking about Penix yet or not, but I would start thinking about it because obviously, they got rolled by this Chargers team, and you're going to run into better teams than this Chargers team in the NFC playoffs. So the Falcons are going to have to be better. But back to the Chargers, I mean, like I said, this defense, I give them a hard time early on in the year for the schedule that they played. But you know what? They're still playing really, really well against higher quality teams. So I'm giving them. I guess they haven't moved up, right? It's just because none of my opinions have changed too much about the teams that are in this tier, except for the Broncos and the Seahawks and the Commanders, obviously. But another good win for them. I would like to see them do it to like a Super Bowl favorite, like they played the Ravens, and they were pretty clearly sort of in a different tier. And I think that's what's just going to keep them here. I think they are sort of maxed out, but in the end of the day, it's a win's a win. So 8-4, Chargers are at 10. Moving on to the next team, number 9, we got the Houston Texans. We're 8-5, and they haven't moved. Like I said, my opinion really hasn't changed. I kind of feel like this is the most average great team ever. Why? Because as much, but I mean, going into this season, we saw them add Diggs, we saw them add Joe Mixon, right? Like, the offensive line is gonna be healthy. This Texans team is gonna win the Super Bowl. Diggs is out. Mixon missed a few weeks. Nico hit the IR with a hammy. So you could credit the 5 losses to a combination of those things if you want to, but it's not even just been the offense. I mean, this defense, you saw what happened last week against Will Levis, and it's just like big plays. I mean, why do they let up so many big plays? It's supposed to be like a discipline cover 3 defense, if I'm not mistaken, that is supposed to tackle and kind of bend and not break. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it's supposed to be. Kind of like the Giants defense, but it's actually supposed to work, and it's not working. At least not every game. So even with this elite pass rush they have, I mean, Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, that's got to be top 5 in the league when it comes to an edge rushing duo, and just not getting it done on the defensive side. So I'm not going to move them up or down. They did win, but it was against the Jaguars, and you won by 3. So just kind of more of the same from the Texans. I don't know. I'm a little worried about them. Then moving on to our next team, we got the Minnesota Vikings. This team blew out the Texans early on in the season. I believe this was when some of the injuries started setting in for the Texans. But this Vikings team, they just don't beat themselves. I mean, they're 10-2, so obviously they know how to win. But having them this low at 8 is purely a projection. I mean, Darnold's been better the past few weeks. He was looking a little rough there for a minute, but he's starting to figure it out. He got the win here in this week, and that's what you like to see. I mean, this Cardinals team is pretty good. Obviously, they give the Vikings a fight, but in the end of the day, the Vikings are more talented. Better O line, better cast of weapons, I would say, and their defense isn't any more talented than the Cardinals defense, but I would say as good of a job as Jonathan Gannon has done, Brian Flores is definitely a better defensive coordinator. So it probably came down to a combination of that spread out throughout the game. The Vikings were just in the position to win the game, and that's what happened. So, like I said, not too much changing of my opinion on them, but just elaborating a little bit more on why I have them here. It's just Darnold, right? I just don't follow. I don't see him going into a divisional round game and beating some of these other NFC teams. I get he beat the Packers, but I just think playoff Packers is going to be different than regular season Packers. So let's talk about the next team, number 7, the Green Bay Packers, 9-3. They have not moved. My preseason Super Bowl conference champion, NFC representative. Quietly 9-3. Slow and steady wins the race. Am I right? This team's got everything it needs. It's got playmakers on defense. They've got obviously a great cast of weapons on offense. They got a good offensive line, and they got Jordan Love, and they got Matt LaFleur, head coach. So they really just why are they at 7 then, right? Why are they down here? Well, this team never plays like a complete football game. Like they never do it. It's kind of like the Texans actually. Either Jordan Love has a terrible first half, and then the second half he turns it on, or the defense just doesn't have a good game overall when the Packers offense is on. I mean, that's just kind of what it's been for them. I mean, it's kind of like a team I'll talk about later that I'll call back to this when we get to them, but they just got to play a complete game, right? And they can beat literally anyone, in my opinion. I mean, Jordan Love is such a talented quarterback. The plays he was making, the way he looked last year in the playoffs, I haven't forgotten about it, and I don't intend to forget anytime soon. But yes, I have the Packers at 7. They're not budging. And let's move on to our next tier, who has a new member. They have not moved in numerical ranking, but they have moved in tier ranking. And that is our number 6 team, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 9-3. Oh, so steady. Oh, so steady. This team has probably a top 3 identity, I would say in the NFL. Offense, defense, special teams, everything is on the same page. I mean, if it was just the offense and defense, I wouldn't be quite as excited. But seeing the special teams plays that have been made by guys like Calvin Austin, it's just been like, wow, that's what you see out of a Super Bowl team, right? You see turnover. You don't just see a great offense and a defense. You see turnovers and special teams plays, right? Think back to the Chiefs versus the Eagles. Kadarius Toney, that punt return, that was huge. That literally perhaps even saved enough time on the clock because you don't know how much of it would have been chewed if they had to march down the field, put them in position to win. Obviously, he also scored. But special teams is important. Offense, defense, special teams, everything is on the same page. And in this game, when the defense doesn't show, what do I mean when I say you have an identity and everyone's on the same page? Well, what I mean is that if you are a only defensive team, right, and you go up against a team like Joe Burrow and he starts putting up 30, you're going to lose, right? But this Steelers team, they got a counterpunch. Even if you do figure out their defense, they can keep up with you on offense, clearly. I mean, what a monster performance by Russ. So it looks like this team can win in any way. And that's what you need to be a Super Bowl team, right? That's like what the Lions are, right? That's what I would say most of the teams in this tier are, is they can win in almost any way except for one of the teams in this tier. So I'm so excited that the Steelers are now a Super Bowl favorite, according to me. But yeah, love what I'm seeing from the Steelers recently. I can't wait to see more, and I can't wait to see them in the first round of the playoffs. Moving on to our next team, who I really heavily contemplated putting at 6 instead of 5, but I thought it'd be a little too much. The Baltimore Ravens are my number 5 team. They're 8-5, and I've moved them down 3 spots. How is this team 8-5? I mean, I feel kind of like the Packers, right? Said I was going to make a reference back to it. This team just doesn't play complete football games. I get they've had, they've missed Humphrey and Wiggins, so that kind of accounts for the, the struggles in the secondary. And, this week they versed a really, really tough defense, right? So, I get it, but 5 losses is not what a Super Bowl favorite has at this point in the season, unless if they suffered greatly from injuries, right? Or missed their quarterback or something. Obviously, this team's upside is right up there with any of these teams, right? But to me, hear me out for a second. Is Lamar capable of so much right? And I think about this in the AFC Championship game too. Is he capable of so much that he feels the need to sit in the pocket and try to pass when really it's just easier to just take off, right? But he's got to like fight it. Like it's like this devil on his shoulder that's like, go take off. You could get 8 to 10 yards so easily right now. Just take off and slide and live to see another down. But he's like, no, no, no. I got to get the ball to my teammates. I don't need to do this all by myself. I shouldn't want to. But I feel like that's what ends up happening. And I don't know. It's just really disappointing and upsetting to see them have 5 losses, a team with Derrick Henry and Lamar. I mean, come on now. Like you guys should have been like scoring 30 points every single game. But I get that they've had a lot of change in this offseason. They have looked really good at points this year, but just I want to see it more consistently. And, I really contemplated putting the Steelers ahead of them just because the Steelers are consistent, right? You got to give that to them. I mean, both the Ravens and the Steelers lost to the Browns, right? And if the Steelers played the Eagles, I don't know what would happen. It would be a really good game, but I don't know. Right now, I have them ranked below the Eagles, so this is the way I'm keeping it. I do feel pretty good about it, but that's my number 5 and 6 team. Moving on to number 4. What's up, Eagles fans? I finally moved you guys up in my tier list. No, I didn't move you ahead of the Chiefs, Bills, or Lions, but I moved you ahead of the Ravens because you beat them. Biggest statement win of the Hurts era, in my opinion. I mean, even if it took Justin Tucker, a Hall of Fame kicker, who's having a random terrible year, leaving 7 points on the board. The offense, even if it took that, it's still a win. The offense still having that weird thing where for 3 quarters they just don't figure it out. And like Nick Sirianni says, they're just going to figure it out. You know what? They do. And you know how you figure it out is, 3 quarters of Saquon Barkley taking handoffs and stopping him from breaking a long run is just exactly what an offense needs to, have them break out a run in the fourth quarter. Is running backs who are elite are usually good in the fourth quarter. Why? Because they're well conditioned, they're great athletes, the defense is tired, and it becomes harder and harder to tackle them, which means they're more and more likely to break off explosive plays. So I am a little concerned about this team's ability to play a full game. But you know what? They got exactly what the Steelers got and the Chiefs got, where they do not beat themselves unless if Hurts turns the ball over. That's when they beat themselves. But when he doesn't turn the ball over, you have to play a perfect game to beat this team. And the Ravens did not do that, and that is why they lost. They missed field goals, changes the game script. They could have taken the lead twice, late in the third, early in the fourth, and they couldn't do it. So you know what happened? Eventually the Eagles capitalized, right? They get those Saquon Barkley runs. They get down into the red zone. Obviously, they're like unstoppable down there. So that's just what happened between these two teams. Respecting the Eagles for now. But, we'll just have to see. But to be honest, something I actually haven't mentioned yet is his defense. This defense is really taking me by surprise this year. Quinyon Mitchell, like I said, he's a beast. The front seven, everyone on the front seven is good. I would say the only hole, like I said, is maybe like Reed Blankenship or something like that. But yeah, this team is just they really don't have a hole. But that doesn't mean everyone's great, right? I'm talking about Jalen Hurts specifically. He's got one of the easiest jobs in the league. I mean, you look at guys like Jared Goff. I guess you can make the argument for him. There's some other teams out there. Maybe Russ has got a decently easy job, but we saw Fields not do too well, so maybe that's not quite as easy. But yeah, I would say this is a top 3. Well, oh yeah, Purdy. That's who I was missing. Brock Purdy. So he's got one of the 3 easiest jobs in the NFL. No offense to Purdy, Hurts, or Jared Goff. They're all great players in their own respect, but there's just going to be a limit to how much credit we can give you if you're on a super talented roster. It's not anything personal. It's just objective, right? But yeah, I got you, Eagles fans. I got your respect. You guys are number 4. Not putting you ahead of these 3 teams though until I see more. Number 3, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're 11-1, +1. Why +1? They barely beat the Raiders. Well, that's because the Ravens fell, right? And you could say, well, the Eagles had a better week. Well, maybe, but this is way beyond like just 1 week. the Chiefs' ranking in this top three is probably the safest out of all of these teams because the Chiefs have the ultimate benefit of the doubt. Understand, Tom Brady was talking about this today, and me and many other people have been saying how this Chiefs team is just like the Patriots teams. They have a great defense. They got a quarterback who's very dangerous in the fourth quarter when he's got 4 downs to work with. That's what Brady said. And they're not going to beat themselves. And you know what? That's what they've done all year. And you could argue and you could say penalties and everything, but they're 11-1. And it's just hard to beat a team like that. That's so good on defense that even when you have a lead in the fourth quarter, their defense, all it takes is one stop for their defense, even with 5 minutes left for Mahomes to go win the game and put it out of reach for you by chewing up the clock, right? By having these really long drives. So this team is just so steady. Having Tom Brady's endorsement certainly helps a little bit, but I'm just being objective. This is how I've kind of always viewed the Chiefs this whole season. I really wanted to move them down this list, but I said, you know what? I think they looked even worse last year. And how did they look in the playoffs? They looked really good. You know what? They did not have an easy playoff schedule. They did not. They played the Dolphins. Okay. It could be worse than the Dolphins, but then they played the Bills and the Ravens. 2 teams that I have in the top 5 right now. Probably were top 5 last year. So it's not like I see no reason to doubt the Chiefs is what I'm saying. Even if they don't look great right now. I'm not going to say they're not trying, but the level of intensity and urgency is going to be a lot different if you're, say, one of these playoff hopeful teams, right? Playing another playoff hopeful team compared to if you're the Chiefs and you're playing the Raiders. I mean, you could say, oh, every game, we're trying our hardest, but it's just human nature. You're just not going to try quite as hard if there's not as much at stake. So I think that's the explanation for why the Chiefs don't look as good, right? And the box scores don't look as good, but they don't mess up. Moving on to my number 2 team, replacing the Baltimore Ravens at number 2, we have the Buffalo Bills at 10-2 +1. Why? Because the Ravens moved down. The Ravens did beat the Bills earlier in the year. The Eagles beat the Ravens. You can make this whole argument for the Eagles to be ahead of them, but this is another team that has earned the benefit of the doubt for me at least to make the playoffs, right? And all these teams are making the playoffs, right? But I just think this year's a little different, right? I think they've arrived. They beat the Chiefs handedly, right? Why did they win that game against the Chiefs? Because they went for it on 4th down. That is why they beat the Chiefs. They did not kick a field goal. They didn't call soft. They didn't make soft decisions. They said, you know what, we're going to go for it. And you know why? Another reason it was a great decision, because you have Josh Allen, someone who's like, who Anthony Richardson is like him. I was saying he's so hard to stop in short yardage. So is Josh Allen, right? Obviously. And they gave the ball to their best player on 4th down with a chance to seal the game, and it worked. And you know what? I think that really boosted the confidence of this team, and they've been on an absolute roll. I mean, their run game and their offense is so explosive, and their defense looks so much better than they did since that Ravens game. Looks like they're really taking on to the new coaching. There's a lot of new guys in the starting lineup, so very, very good to see from the Bills. You got the Josh Allen factor. But to be honest, I will point out, I think the Chiefs' benefit of the doubt is so strong. You could justify the Chiefs being 1 or 2, but just right now, I'm putting the Bills at 2. But once the playoffs roll around, do not come at me if I pick the Chiefs to win one of these matchups or something. But yes, the Bills, number 2, they very much earned it and they deserved it. Those 2 losses coming early on, they've been on fire since then. And then moving on to our number 1 team, we got the Detroit Lions at 11-1. Not moving at all. This is a team to beat. They made a mistake this week, though. Gibbs fumbled before half. And the Bears were able to sort of make their way back into the game because the Lions didn't score there. But other than that, like this, I guess the second half was a little disappointing for the Lions. But I've said many times how I think the Bears are a talented team, right? The Lions still ended up winning, didn't they? Right, and that's because of the coaching. The Lions don't have a hole, right? When their talent is matched up by the Bears' talent, then it's the coaching that ends up winning the game. And you know what? The coaches didn't even have to do anything. They just had to let Matt Eberflus screw it up. So that's what happened there. I'm not moving them, but I would say this group of six up here, very, very, very close. And then I would say the Packers and Vikings are kind of on the verge. And then Texans through Commanders are kind of their own tier teams who are going to lose in the wild and divisional card rounds. The Vikings and the Packers maybe make a conference championship. Um, that's what it's looking like right now. But these top six teams, I'd say they all got a shot. They all got a shot to win the Super Bowl in their own way. They all need, just like anyone else, a little bit of luck. But I just think the Lions have the best shot right now, and I don't think anyone disagrees with that. It's not a hot take, and really doesn't need much explaining. All right, so that should do it. The biggest risers are the Cleveland Browns moving up to 23. That's not exciting, but the Washington Commanders moving up to 13. And then the biggest fallers are the Cincinnati Bengals, the Baltimore Ravens, and the New York Jets. Um, Unfortunately for those teams, but if you did enjoy watching this video, please leave a like. I'm working so hard to get you guys these videos. Um, Obviously, like I said, I'm not feeling too well today, but I'm still getting this long one out for you guys. After this is going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the week. So, got to get it done. Got to suck it up, get it out there for you guys. If you did enjoy, leave a like, comment on the video with your thoughts. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? How should this top six be ordered? Tell me. Should it even be six? Maybe I should include the Packers, or I should take away the Steelers and Ravens. I don't know. Tell me in the comments. And if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching, and peace out.